everyone. This is Pam Reese with Adventures in Aging, and I'm here with Gary Vandenberg.
It's great to be here, Pam.
Wanted to thank all of our listeners that have tuned into our podcast over the last couple weeks, and hopefully you're going to keep sharing and keep rating us. We love doing it.
This is a fun time, isn't it?
It is. So today, Gary, we're going to talk about the choices that we've made in our lives.
Oh, boy.
How choices from when we're young affect us when we're older.
They do, don't they? They kind of follow us. Some of them follow us our whole lives, don't they?
They do. So, Gary, what is your earliest memory of a choice you ever made?
My earliest memory, what comes to mind immediately was I was probably like 3 years old. However, you're old enough to walk. Is that like 3?
Yeah.
And I followed my brother across the street. We lived in a little neighborhood. It's kind of safe to walk across the street to this house that was being built. And all I remember was walking upstairs, and I walked in the bathroom. All right, I'm only like 2.5 feet tall, right?
Right.
And I walk in the bathroom, and I walk over something that was like cardboard, and it turned out to be, well, I thought it was the floor, but it turned out to be cardboard.
You're a baby.
Yeah, next thing you know, I'm in the basement. I remember flying through the air.
Where was Mom?
They were back at a party at our house across the street. So my brother, who weighed less than me, I think, he was 3 years older than me, he comes down because he probably knew he was in trouble. He's probably like 6 years old or something, right?
Right.
And he picks me up, and here he's carrying little Gary up these stairs.
Come on.
Yeah, up the stairs, out of the basement, out into the yard. And our neighbor comes walking out from his house, the next door neighbor to the house being built, and says, John, let me carry a little Gary.
Come on. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
My earliest memory of the decision. So
okay.
My decision. And my brother goes, oh, no, don't. He's not heavy. He's my brother.
Okay.
With tears in his eyes. And there, you've got the whole life decision.
Is this before the song?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm sure it was. And, the best part of that whole thing was I sprained my ankle quite badly, and my sisters always were kidding how they got to, carry me around for months, I think. I could probably walk, but the fact is I really milked it for as much as I could.
So your poor mom.
I don't recall her at all in this story, or my father.
You're a baby.
But I do recall being a baby, and I do recall being carried up the staircase, and these are choices we make. So,
Gary, you made a bad choice at 3 years old. It stayed with you.
It stayed with me. That has followed me my whole life.
So, interestingly, the choices in the life cycle. When you're young, your parents are generally making all the choices for you.
Oh, yeah. What your whole life is in that house and in their life.
Your whole life is,
yes.
But then you do start to incorporate your own choices, right? As a child, you make a choice about which toys you want to play with. Mm-hmm. You make a choice about where in the house you want to play. Right. You make choices eventually about the food you like and the food you don't like. And then it moves on to where you're 18 years old, you're leaving home, and now you're making your own choices in life.
Right.
What's interesting is, as parents, you're making choices for a child, then they make them for themselves, but then you worry about their choices, right? You worry that they're making the right choices, and then later on when they're, adults, married, off and gone, you wonder, did they make the right choices? And then you're hoping that it all turns out for the better.
Right. If you live long enough, they're making decisions about your choices, I'm sure, right? Think about that.
So think about that.
Wow.
Our children today are deciding what to do with us.
Oh, yeah, I think they already have, but
right.
That's a whole nother episode on this.
And I'm going to hope they all make the right choice for me.
I'm sure they will.
So, Gary, we make 35,000 choices per day.
That's a lot of decisions.
That's a lot of decisions, but I think that incorporates every little move you make from the moment you open your eyes in the morning until you go to bed at night.
That's incredible. I wonder who sat down and added that up. I'm sure some scientist probably wired up somebody.
Yeah, I don't know, but if you Google it, you'll see it all over the internet, and there is no one, I believe, that really can tell you where that came from. But what did you tell me that equates to around 8 million?
Yeah, I got my calculator out when I heard that, and I said, I can't believe that. By the time you're 65 years old, you would have made 800 million choices or decisions of that nature. Of course, probably 799 million of them were probably unconscious. But
right.
Everything we do, every left and right, we make decisions. It's a coin flip. Everything's a coin flip at times.
And choices start to become habits, right? I mean, even when we're young, some of the choices that we make on our friends or what we want to major in college, a lot of those stay with us.
Sure. Well, I know growing up, TV was a big thing when I was growing up because I remember when we got our first color television. My
I do too.
I put my face like 1 inch from the screen. I couldn't believe colors were doing those kind of things and creating little dots and creative people. And I bet probably one of those life decisions I made was spending as much time as I humanly could watching television. Isn't that something?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And over things like studying. Studying was no fun, right?
That wasn't a choice.
Yeah,
that was a choice your parents made.
I'll do that later.
Right.
If I could watch television, anything that was on the 3 stations, I think we got, it was definitely worth watching. But yeah, those things that was probably a bad decision, in the hindsight of things. That I really these days I hardly watch anything in comparison to back then, to be honest.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a question. What's your best and worst choices in life that affect you today?
Oh, there, right out of the gate. Well, I would say probably the best choices probably has to do with obviously who you marry, having being your role of having children. I think those were probably good. The career choices, those are always the biggies as far as the good ones. The worst ones I would say. As I said, probably, bad study habits, probably definitely not saving money. I've had relatives that say all along, a penny is a penny, save it.
Right.
That was good advice. Should have listened, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But, those types of things. And, obviously I know one that came to mind that I was thinking about recently, and it's kind of a regret. And in high school, I was trying to be a free spirit, and I actually thought about joining the Peace Corps, going to some exotic place. We had a neighbor down the street that had...
How old were you when you thought?
Like 17 or 18. Okay. And I was all kind of mentally geared up for this. This would be good. There was a neighbor down the street that was a missionary, and kind of knew their family and kind of heard, well, it sounds like a challenging life, but, it'd be very interesting to go those places. So then I ended up going to the Science Museum.
Instead?
No, before this. And, I ended up seeing these spiders and these cockroaches that were like the size of my hand.
Okay.
And it freaked me out so bad. I said, I can't ever go any place that those things would be roaming around on me.
And that was a decision maker.
That was a decision maker.
Okay.
And so much for the Peace Corps. Maybe later on in life there'll be an opportunity. But
is that a regret?
I think it's probably, no, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I think that was just something I thought about when I was 17 or 18 years old. And
Never thought about it
when
again.
I saw those big cockroaches, I said, I'm not going places that those are like cats and dogs. So, yeah. How about you, Pam? What's been your good and bad?
Oh, my gosh. Choices? So just, I've been thinking about this, and you can just come to all kinds of things, right? Like the best choices were having my children and where I had them go to school, and you start thinking of all these decisions that you've made in life. But for me personally, I would say my best decision was to be a nurse. My worst decision was to not pursue a higher education after I got my nursing degree. So the group of kids I was in nursing school with, I'd say predominant numbers, right? Maybe 80% of my class was going to go on and be nurse anesthetists. And that was my choice as well. But then as the end of school and graduation came, I decided, no, I'm not going to go on with those kids. I'm going to go with the 10% of the kids and go to Arizona and work as a new grad in a hospital for 3 months.
Start making money.
Yeah, I don't know what I thought. I mean, I don't even know that I thought about that at the time. But if I could go back, I would have changed that choice for sure.
So, how about as we think about things, I often think about risk too. There's risk involved in things that are going on. And I was thinking about different things I've been involved with over the years that, were kind of choices and kind of peer pressure and those types of things. And I have some very good close friends. And, what came to mind one time when we were thinking about this whole thing about decisions and choices was the time I got talked into jumping out of an airplane.
Oh, my gosh.
And this is somewhat of a quick story.
I don't think that anyone could talk me out of jumping out of an airplane.
And so there was probably a group of about 8 of us. There were some friends and then some relatives in there too, brother-in-laws. And it was a little county airport in the middle of nowhere here in Ohio. And we go there and, what are we doing? This should be fun. How much danger can this be? Right.
Right.
So I recall a couple of things that stand in my mind. It's been years ago. One was they kind of hang you up on this thing. The big concern was what happens when your chute doesn't come out. This was when you really jump out by yourself.
That's a nightmare.
And so they want to prepare you that if your chute doesn't open, you should pull out this other thing, and it makes the secondary chute pop up.
Right, an emergency pull.
So my brother-in-law is hanging from this beam as they're explaining, what do you do this and what do you do that, pull this. And they said, now what happens if your chute doesn't open?
Yeah.
And he pulls these 2 pins that release his harness immediately, and he's laying on the ground.
What?
So we all paid attention after that.
And did you do it?
Well, yes. Well, so then we get into this. Well, then next thing you know, here comes this motorcycle guy, and pulling in. He doesn't have shoes on. Mm-hmm. He's the pilot. Mm-hmm. All right, he's climbing in the plane,
and you're thinking, is this guy flying the plane?
It's a little tiny plane. We flying up in the air. And the parachute was hooked to this string and this wire. So when you jumped out, it pulls out of your parachute and, you float down. And these are like old Army parachutes. They're huge.
Yeah.
And who knows how much they paid for them. Probably as little as they possibly could.
Right.
And so we're way up in the air. We're circling around several thousand feet up in the air there. And my brother-in-law, he's one of the first to jump out. And the rest of us are in the back of this plane that has no windows. It's like one of those little Cessna kind of airplanes. And he jumps out, and all of a sudden, we hear this banging, and it's him hitting the side of the plane. His little parachute cord didn't release it.
Gosh.
He's now hanging on, or one of us has to climb out of the plane.
What?
Go down the side.
Okay, let's make this experience even worse than it is.
Cut him loose if he's unconscious.
Are you kidding me?
We have to ride on the back of him and then pull his chute so he doesn't die. And this is according to the pilot, right? He's yelling, we can't land with him banging on the side.
Well, no, you can't.
So
he's dangling.
So our eyes are all big. We're screaming, oh my gosh, what's this all about? Well, then he starts laughing, the pilot, which was a dangerous guy anyways, and telling us that, no, that's just his little ripcord that's hitting the side of the plane. He's already floating down. He's gone. This was his joke. You're paying for that.
Oh my gosh. Not so funny at the time.
And so, again, it's choices and risk. And I remember sitting at the little door ready to launch out into space and going, well, this is kind of, I'm kind of like challenging God at this moment. You know what you're saying? You're going to, come on, bring it. This is what I got, kind of thing, which was really stupid. And then next thing you know, I'm flying in the air. It's real quiet. It's real peaceful to do this.
Very, yep.
And all I remember is they said, pull on the left if you want to go left and pull it on this right string and you want to go right. I got kind of confused, and I ended up pulling both the strings at the same time, which means you're coming straight down, right?
Oh my gosh.
And all I remember is I was coming down where the planes were taking off on this airport. They were coming at me.
You're in the danger zone.
I was coming down.
No, this is a bad situation.
And then there was something world famously known as the banana roll, and that's where when you get to be about as high as your house, you're supposed to land kind of sideways so you don't break all your bones in your body. So my experience was fine. Now, other people landed in pricker bushes.
Did you laugh? Or was this a laugh later?
When they cut corn and it's all 6 inches tall?
Yes.
Yeah, people were being impaled over on those things. So I considered my landing on the runway was probably the safest of any places.
So is that a choice you would do again?
Well, these guys, after we did that, they're going, we should go kayaking now.
Oh,
Have you ever gone kayaking? I said, I don't know. So next
down a raging river.
Yeah, somewhere in West Virginia, raging river, and a kayak. Well, kayaks, they flip over pretty easily.
Oh, they do. And many, many people have been hurt and killed.
And so of our group, I remember one gentleman, one friend of ours, he ended up being pretty much upside down the whole day. He was banging his head all the way down. The rest of us were kind of nervous. But see, I guess he called that risk taking. You're balancing whether, is it worth it or not?
Yeah. So For the adventure.
For the adventure. Yeah,
you
it's
take
a choice.
risk.
Yeah,
you make a risky choice.
I don't think I can jump out of airplanes or ride down kayaks at this age.
So I would say for me, bringing or listening to you talk about your risky choice, very similar but not really. My husband and I were in the Outer Banks and decided to go parasailing. Parasailing is something my children did when they were younger, teenagers. I never, ever had a desire to parasail. I'm scared to death of heights. And we talked about it and thought, oh, yeah. In those moments when you make a decision because you feel like it's the right thing to do or it's the fun thing to do?
At that moment, yeah.
At that very moment. But if you gave it 2 more minutes of thought, you would never do it.
Absolutely.
So I did it. And Gary, I'm not kidding you. It was the most frightening thing I ever did. I know that people love parasailing, but being up that high, and you're right about the silence that you have at that height, there was nothing I loved about it. And then the guys in the boat below, they're keeping us up there. They're pulling on our what is that? The rope that's holding you up. They're doing all kinds of goofy things. I had my feet wrapped around my husband's ankles, and I was scared to death to move. I was sure I was going to fall to my death.
Oh, my gosh.
So that was a decision and a choice I will never make again. Ever. I didn't learn from it.
Oh, my goodness. No, that's, when we have those experiences, we only have to live those once, right, when it comes to things like that. Well, I mean, how do people deal with choices, though? I mean, when you stop and think about it, there has to be some people over time that have made, life-changing choices and some people that don't. When it comes to, I think you were sharing a story about Steve Jobs and kind of what decisions he made or didn't make, I guess, and what an impact those had.
One of the best things to do through life is to minimize choice fatigue.
Choice fatigue. Never heard of that.
Choice fatigue. And a lot of people that are very, very successful eliminate as many of the minimal choices that they would have to make on a daily basis as they can so that they can free their minds to make the major choices, right? So Steve Jobs, he would wear the black turtleneck, the jeans, the tennis shoes every day. That was his choice. He didn't even have to think about what he was going to put on.
He had a closet full of these.
He had a closet full of them. That's what he wore every single day.
Wow.
It is said that Barack Obama had 2 suits, gray suits and blue suits. He didn't want to have to think about what suit he was going to wear. And then my husband, Jason, I can tell you is in that category.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He has the same North Face pants, maybe in 4 colors, the same North Face half zip, and the same North Face T-shirts in 5 different colors. And every day he wakes up and puts on one of those combinations. He doesn't have to think, he just grabs. Now, it might be a different color, but it's the same brand. And so
he's trying to avoid the fatigue, right?
Yeah, because I can tell you, Gary, that I have decision fatigue right off the bat in the morning. I might put on one outfit, look at myself and go, no, not today. Go change it, put on another one, and maybe 4 outfits later say, yeah, this is the one.
Oh, yeah. I think I've got 20 different kinds of socks, so it's a challenge at times.
And do you rummage through your drawer until you find the right ones?
Yeah, I have favorite ones. Everyone has favorite ones. I'm sure
so, have you ever thought about just eliminating your non-favorites? Throw them out.
Yeah, I've thought about that. But I tend to be a cheapskate on things.
So you keep them.
A cheapskate. And part of that cheapskateness is what I wanted to bring up, too. And that's, when it comes to decisions, I'm one of those guys that will drive like 20 miles to probably save 10 cents. Or, I see gasoline is 2 cents more over there than here.
Yeah.
And then also, things like car repairs.
Yeah.
I've made some bad choices. Made one recently in the last couple of months where my wife was out of town and said, hey, can you, check my brakes or do this or that? Well, I said, that's fine. She was gone for a couple of days.
Sure.
And so what ended up happening was I couldn't get the tire off at all. And so I ended up referencing where you go these days for here comes somebody to arrest us here. So, oh, good, they drove by. So, but I couldn't get the tire off the car. So I go to YouTube because that's where you get all the answers these days, right? And so, and they said, well, just loosen the nuts on that tire and you'll hear a pop. And that means then the tire will loose. Well, I drive just a little ways from our house, and sure enough, I hear not only the pop, but I hear like the nuts being pulled off of the car.
Oh, my gosh.
And it ended up almost ripping the whole tire off.
Yeah.
Eventually, it just, I'm at the bottom of this.
Is this an activity you really should have
3 hills,
attempted to do?
And it got worse and worse and worse. But the whole thing was, sometimes, whether it's choices or regrets or something, that ended up costing like $400 or $500 to fix that thing. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I should have just gone in the first place and gotten the brake job somewhere else.
I am so the opposite. I like the path of least resistance. And so if I have to pay a little bit more to make it easier, that's what I do. I don't go out of my way to make life easier, or I'm sorry, to make life harder.
Right.
I go out of my way to make it easier.
Oh, yeah. And I've built grills like 3 different ways. How's that sound? The wrong way, the somewhat right way, and then I think closer to the right way.
Yeah.
When I probably should have paid $20 and had somebody just build the darn thing.
Right.
Along the way.
So there's this saying that is among the most important personal choices you can make is to accept complete responsibility for everything you are and everything you will ever be. This is a great turning point in life. And I know that you have a couple of old statements or song lyrics.
Oh, yeah, that come to mind. My father, I've been thinking about him since we've been doing these podcasts. Somehow I'm thinking about him a lot these days. And one thing I recalled when we were thinking about choices and decisions was he had in his wallet my whole life. And he died early when he was 58. But he had the Robert Frost poem, The Road Not Taken.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you've ever heard that. It's kind of very popular.
Right.
It kind of starts, the 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood.
It's
and sorry, I could not travel both. It's kind of a deep thing. And the poem ends with, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And it's deep,
It is.
And there's moments in that, if you really analyze it, about, decisions. They're both the same. One was a little bit more worn than the other one. He's trying to look down both of these trails. The horse was even kind of going, what are you doing? So I think what's interesting is how those kind of, impacts our lives. That, are we taking the road less traveled? Yeah, the road not taken. Yeah, and that was kind of deep.
And probably that's the road we should be taking.
Yeah.
Right?
And then the other thing, I was thinking about regrets, and somehow I got in my mind. I actually had to look it up because I knew, this is, how come I've heard that phrase before, the phrase, regrets, I've had a few. Do you know where that comes out of? It's like one of the most famous songs.
I think it's a song from Frank Sinatra.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, My Way, right?
Right.
Versus,
I did it my way.
And, it begins, if I recall, it's something like that. Now the end is near, he's talking. And then somewhere it says, regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. And, when you stop and think about it, it's a deep song. I'd encourage anyone to kind of take a look at it or listen to it. It's always, one of those songs you hear at times.
So here's one of the aspects of getting older. You tend to take more time to analyze the meaning of things like that.
You get deeper. You
get deeper.
I think there's song lyrics I've heard recently that I've heard them sung, but I never really sat down and listened to them.
I'm right there with you. Like, I would sing a song the wrong way for years, put in the wrong lyrics, and suddenly I find myself listening to know the right lyrics. It's a getting older thing when you start to pay a little closer attention to what something means.
Okay. Well, song lyrics, yeah. If you sang it that way all your life, you might as well just keep singing the bathroom's on the right, I think, or something.
Right. I think I will. I think I will. So one of the interesting facts about choices is that, in general, we tend to accept things as they exist, or we accept the responsibility for changing them. And one of the hardest things in life is to change those choices. People don't like to leave their comfort zones, right?
People don't like, if you don't have to change, most people don't change, do they?
They won't. And they may even self-reflect and think that I need to change and I need to be different. But it's very, very difficult to change a decision or to come outside of your comfort to be different.
Yeah, I've often thought that, one definition I always say is change is a conflict with the status quo. You're intentionally trying to make something different. And I thought about this several years ago, and I read something, and what comes to mind is, we're really only motivated to change by three things. And I remember writing
What
it
are
down.
those?
What are those, Pam? So,
Yeah, what are
the
they?
first one is a good motivator, I guess. It's short term, but it's fear.
Oh my gosh.
People
for
respond.
real.
If you go to a doctor and the doctor says you're going to die if you don't change, you're
going to change.
or you may not die, you may suffer.
Sure.
You may be motivated to because of fear. I've had bosses, inflicting a certain amount of fear, saying, if you don't do this, you'll
lose your job.
You'll lose your job.
Right.
Those types of things. The other motivator is obligation. I call it kind of guilt. This is your job, your role.
Oh my
This is what I
gosh.
need to do. Whatever it might be. And then the third motivator is always the best, and that's probably passion, love, desire, those types of things.
Those are the best choices
And-
that you could make.
So I think people that I've known in my life that really have stepped up go that third route. They really find something they're passionate about and pursue that with all their vigor and everything else to try to make a
Sure.
difference in their lives.
So one of the hang-ups that people can in their 50s or 60s think about a lot is, well, I made my choices, or I made my bed, now I have to lay in it, right? This is what I decided. I don't know how to change it. I'm too old to change it. I don't want to change it. But the fact is, everyone has the ability to take that road less traveled. Everyone has the ability to take another road. And it's not an easy thing to do because you will be leaving that comfort zone that you have enjoyed. But while you're enjoying your comfort zone, it may not be the best for you, and you may not feel completely satisfied with it.
Right. Well, staying the same is getting worse in my mind, especially as you're aging. It's that
Right.
inactivity you've talked about before. If you don't move or exercise one day, what you
Right.
say it takes 2 days to catch up to it.
3
right?
days.
3
3
days.
days to catch up.
So when you stop and think about it, somebody says, I'm settling. I call it settling.
Yeah.
People are settling in and saying, well, I really could go out and do that, but I don't want to.
You don't have the energy, the strength, or the desire, even though you think it may be the best thing for you.
Right.
So one of the interesting things about changing your life story is Tony Robbins. I can love him and I can.
Well, I've heard of him. Yes,
yeah,
I've seen
I
him.
can love Tony Robbins and I cannot love Tony Robbins, but he has a lot of truth in some of his statements. And one truth that I think is fabulous is changing your story. Just because that's your life story, just because you're living with all those choices and decisions through life, you do have the ability to change that. And it comes from within. And I think that if people were to realize that they can literally take a moment and change their decision-making process and start to go with their gut, go with what's feeling good. And maybe it takes coming outside of that comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it in my own life when I've made different choices. I've often said, sometimes when you tell other people about something, you can gain their support to it also. Instead of just keeping it in your own mind in your own life, if you say, I'm thinking about doing this, more times than not, people will be encouraging or they'll be honest with you and say, that's going to be quite a goal, but, go for it. And then, the other thing is that, I always put a name to it, something like Project Weight Loss. Or
Okay, so do you do this in your own life?
Well, I think I brought up before about running the marathon.
Sure. My gosh, Gary, you do run marathons.
And part of that was, and I don't run them fast, by the way.
But you run them, and I give you a lot of credit for that.
I remember reading a book, and this book, I said, hey, I'll get smart, I'll read this license. And I opened the first page, and the first page says, get in your car and drive 26 miles before you turn the page, right?
Yeah.
And so I got my car, and I'm sure I drove 26 miles, but
wow.
I'm like, what's this about? You turn the page, and it says, do you really want to do this, right? You're going to have to run as far as you just drove. And that's a long ways when you stop and think about it. Anymore on our phones, it says, how far am I from here to there? And sometimes my mind is still blown away when I say, that's 13 miles away. That's only half a marathon. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What am I thinking about here? But really, I think part of that was, for me doing that, and I probably started when I was probably closer to 55 years of age, was just the idea of getting other people involved, making them know it had a deadline. It was going to be in May on a certain date. That helps to have deadlines when you're trying to change. Getting people to be supportive or honest with you or kind of pushing you, even if you don't want to be pushed, I guess.
Yeah.
And also the idea that, going back to that desire, this was important to me. I wanted to do it, as something on, the bucket list, in life kind of thing, right? So
I love that. I love when people have desires in life. I want to do this or that before I die. And I just want to say to our listeners, do it. Do every one of those things you want to do, right? Get it done.
But don't run up your credit card doing that, right?
Yeah, don't go spend all of your life savings doing it, but figure out how to make that happen. I am such a strong proponent of living your best life now, living it today, because you never know what you have left in your life.
That always blew my mind that, people would say, I'm saving till I retire. When I retire, boy,
Yes.
my wife and I, we're going to go travel the world. And I'm thinking, I wonder how many people never made it there.
So my mom and dad, since you brought that up, my mom and dad always talked about traveling after retirement. They were going to get the RV. They had the quintessential retirement plan. And then probably 2 months after my dad retired, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Oh, gosh.
So he spent the next 5 years having chemotherapy. He and mom never bought that RV, and they never went ahead and traveled the way that their dreams for 35 years were aiming them towards. And I even know with me today, where I am today, and I'll ask you this as well. Are you today in the place that you thought you would always be?
No.
Okay.
Of course not. An honest response, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah. I think we all have in our minds how our careers go on.
And how our retirement will be.
And, part of, I guess, my decisions or choices, somewhere along the way, I said, instead of being my own boss, I should go work for somebody else.
Sure.
Well, guess what? Years later, I worked with some of those people 10 years, 6 years. They all either closed or laid me off.
Right.
In a group layoffs, wiping out whole divisions. And you stop and think, you wake up at a certain age going, you know what? Am I happier? Am I further along down the road? I don't think so. See what I'm saying?
I do.
But at the time, it was important to get a job and have that security and be part of the...
And now you're pursuing the opportunities and the things that you've always wanted to.
Yeah. And there's things that are exciting to me and things that aren't. I've got several relatives that literally read 80 and 100 books a year. 80 to 100 books a year.
Can't even imagine.
Can you imagine? If I read 2, I consider myself
right. Me too. I'm not a reader.
But to them that's important. That's part of their daily life. That's their choices you make. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, I do other things. Good for them, but the other choices there are in life. So I do like spontaneous things, though. I know we've done that over the years. When my kids were a little younger, it was the 10th anniversary of 9/11. And Shanksville's really not that far away from here. It's
not
like
at all.
2.5 hours. And my boys were at home at that point, and again, this was younger. And I said, let's just get in the car and gun it on over there.
Sure.
And we've done that a few different times. And it becomes, I think, a really lifelong lesson, a lifelong experience.
Yes.
But I think part of that is just the spontaneous of let's jump in the car and just gun over there and experience something and go there and see the whole celebration they had or the memorial service that they had, that celebration. And, just to be part of that experience. We've done that a few times. And, I think that's trying to live more in the now rather than saying, I'll do that when I retire one day. When I'm 80 years old, I'll do that. Well, and I'm not going to do that when I'm 80 years old, probably.
No. I would love to see more people do what they love to do today versus waiting. Time is of the essence. You never know what is going to happen to you tomorrow. And I believe that way. I believe that all those dreams, all those hopes, all those desires, you've got to figure out at some point in your life, it's time to start those desires. Because the longer you wait, we're human. You never know if you will ever reach that.
And so I was thinking about, choices and the impact that we have on others. And I had a fortunate situation several years ago in which I had a boss that had come into some money. He was with a company and they sold, and he ended up with a lot of money. But and now he's with a different company. He's my new boss. Mm-hmm. And what this guy would do is we'd go out to dinner and a business dinner type of thing, and we'd have some food to eat. And let's say we had pizza as an example.
Sure.
Right? And let's say the whole bill came to $25.
Right.
This guy was notorious. He says, "Watch, I'm going to make this person's day." Well, after a while, you start to know. I know what's coming in. And he would pull out a $50 bill and typically leave a $50 tip for meals that were $25, right, out of his own pocket. This was not a company expense. And people laughed. They were in shock. They cried. They had people come out from the kitchen.
Yeah.
And this guy made their day.
Oh my gosh.
And
I love that story.
And it was his choice in his life. I thought, why don't you give me the $50? But
why don't you choose to give that to me?
But I think it was the whole idea that people can choose to make other people's day. And you see it every day on the news where people go out of their way to make a special experience for other people. It's small little things that they do. And I think that's, to me, just the moral of the whole story about choices. As we go back to those millions and millions of things that are flying through our life, those decisions, why can't they be more good ones? Why can't I make more good little tiny decisions that maybe it's a thank you. Maybe it's more thank yous and pleases.
So I want to elaborate on that. One of the biggest changers in making decisions is to take a moment, be present, but be grateful. And there's something to be said for being grateful. So first of all, I'm grateful for where I am today. And I'm grateful for the ability to have freedom of choice and then make your choice. And that's something we don't often do when we're young. But now that we're older, when we want to change some life choices that didn't put us in the right place, right? Or we look back and say, gosh, I wish I would have never. Mm-hmm. You are never too old to make that decision.
That sounds great, Pam.
Well, Gary, I think we hit it. I think we went through life choices and tried to say as much as we possibly could about it.
So our choice now is to wrap this up and see you at our next episode, or listen to our next episode, and make sure that you...
Yes, please make sure that you like, rate, subscribe, and share. Whatever platform that you're listening to our podcast on, we would love for you to pass it on to others, and we appreciate each and every one of you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.